Landscape architects and architecture, and architecture, as many of us understand it, is kind of the science of creating buildings, as it were.
Okay. Let me start with the built environment. Built environment consists of various disciplines. Among them are architecture, landscape architecture, and then we have engineering. These are the profession that deals with the whole built environment. But you can have this categorization. You can identify these different consultants. For example, architects, they work in the buildings, designing buildings, constructing buildings, and the landscape architects, they work on the external environment of the buildings. So I think that is the kind of categorization you can divide between architecture and landscape architecture.
Okay. Now, I think positive story. We'll come back to more of that later. Zaky, tell me about the profession itself. I mean, you're a teacher, and I understand a trained architect, and you are training young architects too. Yeah. I mean, are young architects concerned about climate change? Do they want to see that in their practice when they go out into the wider world?
Of course. I think the way I see it, for the past few years, I've seen progression of green sentiments among the younger generation. Now they have access to all the information out there, and I can see that the sentiments towards doing something for the planet is definitely developing amongst them. And whenever I teach, I always insist on developing the passion and the love for the environment. First and foremost, that's the first agenda that should be dispersed, should be immersed to the students. Once they have this, then they will have the access to all kind of technology and whatever information they need with the ICT. They can start to think about designing better ways of producing new buildings, producing greener buildings. So that is something positive I can see amongst the younger generation.
Okay, wonderful. I mean, that's a really hopeful sign. And Lisa, how do you see this, Zaky? I mean, you're kind of standing outside, is looking at the practice, the practices of many developers. I've seen many townships in Malaysia they're just horrible, cemented, and I know a lot of ordinary Malaysians would rather have tiled gardens than actual green. They probably, because it's easier to clean, they think. There's a real antipathy towards green things, of leaves falling from trees. God forbid. So let's chop down all the trees. I see them in my neighborhood all the time. I mean, how do you see it in terms of, architects being able to impress upon clients the necessity to think about these issues? I mean, do you think it's a losing battle?
Oh, okay. Currently, there's a development industry. We have these what we call green building rating systems. Of course, at this stage, it seems like a greenwash and people just adopting it for marketing purpose. But if you actually follow those guidelines, you are actually helping the environment, because they are based on specific scientific research that if you do this, certain outcome will come about because of the green consideration. And in terms of adopting green landscape, all these are embedded in green building index, what we call green building index. It is a voluntary rating system developed by the industry, people who knows the technology, the technicalities of construction industry. And because of this, you can see that the trends, people start to pay attention to all the green practices. Of course, when they adopt it in the beginning, it's just a matter of trying to score some points. But over time, I think people start to, internalize this technique and this passion about green technology into the buildings and to the whole built environment.
No, so how do you see this? I mean, do you, whether for living or for retail or for other types of activities, do you think there's a consciousness among Malaysians that they should choose a building that is high up on the green index?
Yeah, I think nowadays demands by the buyers is
country, which is something I think many Malaysians might not even recognize as a fact. But come back to you, Zaky. Questions of taste. I mean, and are we talking only about residential housing? I mean, what about industrial housing? What about our factories? Can our factories go green as well? I mean, these are huge parts of the country taken over for industrial production.
Yeah.
Do they need to conform to green standards?
Exactly. When we say the word green, people sometimes they assume trees and plants. but green in the general terms, it means also taking care of the environment. And currently the pressing problem is the amount of CO2 being released to the environment. And people don't realize that building contributes up to 40% of CO2 emission, even in this country. So that's quite a huge amount of contribution of carbon dioxide emission.
Burning, did you say?
It contributes in the sense that when we switch on a light, for example, there's no CO2 being emitted there and then, but the power comes from power plant, and the power plant are working hard to produce this energy, and they are burning fossil fuel. So that's where the CO2 from the building actually comes from.
Right.
From
in
the
fact,
power plants.
A couple of shows ago, we talked about new technologies to monitor the use of energy in our homes and so on and so forth. Cement production.
CO2 from the building actually comes from
In
the
fact,
power plants.
A couple of shows ago, we talked about new technologies to monitor the use of energy in our homes and so on and so forth. Cement production. Cement production seems to be a huge contributor to CO2.
This is something in the discipline we call embodied energy. People don't realize that actually the production of building materials itself, for example, if you buy a brick, it's not just a dead brick. When you first produce it, you have to first extract the raw material. This involves machinery, and then you have to transfer it to the factory. You need transportation, and then in the factory itself, machines, and you burn it. All these CO2 are being released because just to produce this one brick. So the choice of materials is one of the green consideration in a building. So many people don't realize that.
And that could be also, so now our factories also could be green if they choose correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a